on this computer. Great. So now we're recording. If you don't want your image on the recording, you can turn the camera off for yourself. You're always allowed to do that, invited to do that if you want to. If not, I'm sure people who watch them like to see everybody's little faces on the side. Here we are. Welcome to the last week of class. You'll see on the homepage of Canvas, I put these 4 things up. That's really all we have left to do. Some of you, about half of you have turned in your individual projects. The other half are kind of like finishing up, and that's fine. As soon as you get those in, whenever you get those in, we'll be fine. The week 13 Padlet is still going on. So if you haven't done that yet, I think everyone who's here has done it already. But for those of you at home, I guess we're all at home. For those of you not in attendance, you still have time to put your week 13 Padlet up. Annotated bibliography, you can either have one person from your group notify me and I will go and look at it in the Google Doc and put the grades in for everyone. Or if you get antsy and people in your group are still working and you want me to put your grade in, if that makes you feel better, you can copy and paste your 3 references with the annotations and like put it on Canvas, so upload it in Canvas in the blank. Does that make sense? So either way is fine, and you still have today and tomorrow to work on that. And I've been checking on the ones in Google Docs, and it seems like most people have like found their sources. They've got links to them. Some people have put the bibliographic information in, and a few people have the annotation. So everybody's kind of in just different stages of that process, which is all good. And we got week 14 Padlet, which I don't think we have a discussion later on. And we do have a couple of chapters to read in the Anders, which we'll talk about when we meet next Wednesday. But this Padlet, I think I'll put a prompt up just to reflect on the semester and what worked and didn't and what I could do to improve the online class if we start teaching in the fall. I have some ideas about that because I teach online classes and they look different from what we did here. But it's always good to have your feedback on that. And then the academic and career plan, which after Ayana leaves today, I can talk a little bit about that. But I tried to put some more descriptive text in the assignments for that so that it would be clear what that is, how long it needs to be. It's a reflective personal essay, so it shouldn't require a lot of outside work. It's just sort of like sitting down and concentrating on writing out your story for the semester. Any questions about that? All right, well, we're clipping along. Then I am gonna hand it over to Ayana, who's from Career Services, and she can tell you a little bit about what they can do for you. I saw in the Padlets, lots of you were like, I've never been to Career Services. I don't even know where it is. So you could start maybe by letting people know where to go. And I will hand it over to you, Ayana.
All right. Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Ayana, and I am the career advisor for the College of Arts, Social Sciences, and Humanities. So probably most of you, if you have a major in that college, probably is everybody an English major in this class, or just majors and minors? A mix?
Majors and minors, and then a few people who like needed an English credit and decided that this is what they wanted to spend their time on.
Got it, a variety. Okay, that's good, that's great. And so our career advisors work with specific majors so that we can make sure that we're helping you to the best of our ability. We are located in 1209 Centennial, typically when we're all face-to-face, although we're all, of course, in our homes currently. That's right in the first floor of Centennial, as soon as you walk in right next to the elevator, so we're pretty easy to find. So yes, I was asked to talk a little bit about what Career Services can do for you all, so I'm going to share my screen and just kind of do a run through of our services and see if y'all have any questions along the way. The website is pretty easy to find, uwlax.edu/AACCS, which is our full name, Academic Advising Center and Career Services. And you can see a fairly busy homepage, so I like to make sure to point some things out. Along the left-hand side, you'll see we have a menu that kind of says like, who are you? Our students and alumni can click down on this tab and see a variety of resources for them. People ask a lot like, why does somebody come to Career Services? I think usually when people think of Career Services, they think of a resume review or I'm applying for a job and I need help. And while that's probably the biggest thing students come to us for, a really big part of my job, probably the second biggest part of my job, is exploring majors and careers. One of the most frequently asked questions I have is, what am I going to do with my major? What can I do with my major? What should I do with my major? So I cover that question a lot, and we have a whole section dedicated to it on our website. A quick note right now, you'll notice that we have this pinned area at the top for COVID-19 resources, and I'll point some of those out a little bit later, but if you scroll down, you'll see the normal content for each section. And for exploring majors and careers, we have this kind of step-by-step process to help you think about different phases of exploration. The first being self-assessment. So when people come in and say, what am I gonna do? I'm like, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your interests, your skills, your values. Think that it's worth your time to go through and reflect on those if you haven't before. I think we think a lot about our interests. What do you like to do? What are you good at? What are your hobbies? But we don't always think as critically about things like skills and values. Skills, sometimes we stop at what am I good at currently, but we don't always evaluate gaps in our skill set. And as we continue to goal set, that's something that we need to continue to revisit. So if I decide that I've got this new career interest in mind, I need to think about my current skills, also skills I need to develop. I need to think about weak areas that I have and my strong areas. And then lastly, values, which is really how we make decisions when we're considering maybe family is a really big value for you. So you start to make your decisions around things like work-life balance and getting home at the end of the day. Or maybe recognition is a really big value for you. And so you start to think about a company where you're going to get that recognition, where you're going to be seen and have your accomplishments acknowledged. So all three of those areas are really important, and we have some different guidance for that process here. One tool that we point students to quite a bit is called Focus 2, which is a series of self-assessments along all of those areas that you can complete through Handshake. And then at the end of it, it gives you some ideas about some different careers that you might explore based on your responses. What it does is it matches up your responses with people who are actually in different career fields and says, because you are interested in these things, these people are also interested in these things, and here's the fields that they work with, which means this is not like a plug in your answers and it will tell you what you should do. If I had a tool that did that, I would have like Jeff Bezos money. I don't have that tool. This is just a jumping off point and where you can see like people who like similar things to you tend to go into these different fields. So Focus 2 is a great resource. The next step gets into more of the actual exploration and research components of this. So you can see a section on major information, including this question, what can I do with this major? This is a link I spend a lot of time on with my students, where basically they can see a list of common majors and then areas that people tend to go into with that major. So I know we're a variety of majors here, but I will focus on English here today. If I click that tab, it will say, here are areas that people tend to go into. They'll break that down a little bit more specifically, talk about employers who might hire you in that area, and then strategies to get there. This is a nice resource because it can kind of get you an idea of like, generally, this is where people tend to go at this major. But I do tell people it's not an all-encompassing list. Our majors are very creative. Our students are very creative and they go into all different areas. But again, most commonly, most generally, these are some areas you might think about with that major. So that's a helpful tool to get you started. There's also a career information section with resources that help you learn more about specific occupations. So if you're interested in publishing, you could go do some research here to see what do people tend to do in that position, what industries do they tend to work in, what are average salaries, and so on. And then there's some different ideas for continuing to explore your options, like intro classes, classes like this, attending career events, doing informational interviews or job shadows, meeting with your academic advisor, and then lastly, gaining experience. We do actually have a whole tab on gaining experience that I'll jump to in a minute here, but just to finish out these steps, you can also see resources to help you narrow down your decision after you've identified some options, and then lastly, actually taking action on your goal. So again, kind of a nice step-by-step process as you're working through exploration, whether that's major exploration or career exploration. It's a process that really works for a variety of things. Any questions so far? Please feel free to raise your hand along the way if you all have questions. I feel like I'm talking into the void. It's a different format than in the in-class version. So then the next tab I'll jump down to is gaining experience. Again, we talk to students about all kinds of things, and I am always telling students you don't have to wait to come see me until you have something you're applying for. I can talk to you about planning along the way and figuring out how you're going to get there, how you're going to explore. Gaining experience and trying things out is one of the best ways to explore. You never really know if you like something or don't like something until you give it a try. An example that I like to use a lot are my students who tell me they like to work with kids and they want to work with kids for their job. I always ask those students, have you worked with kids before? And they're like, no, I mean, I've got like a couple of nieces that are really fun. And I say, okay, let's find an opportunity to get some actual experience with that population. And I would say that 50% of the time, those students come back and they're like, I do not want to work with kids every day. My nieces are a lot of fun, but no. so sometimes things sound really great in theory, but until you actually get to try it out for yourself, you realize, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought, or maybe this isn't quite what I'm looking for. So how can I find something that's closer to what I want to do? So on this section of the website, we go over different areas and ways that you can gain experience. Things like internships are very common for students to consider. Part-time jobs, I think, don't get enough attention. Transferable skills, things that you can learn in one place and take anywhere, are really important. Things like communication and leadership and teamwork, and those can be gained anywhere, even in our part-time retail job that we feel like is really unrelated. We're still gaining things that we can take into the future. Volunteering, of course, and student organizations, getting involved on campus or in the community are great ways to start to test out, how to work with different populations or doing specific tasks you think you might want to do. And those are really nice low commitment ways versus a part-time job or an internship. They can be a little bit shorter term. They can even be one time, and you can try out a variety of different environments before you commit. Study abroad is also on this list currently. Certainly that's something that's on hold right now, but we like to keep it here anyway as a reminder to people just to be thinking about how to expose yourself to different perspectives, different cultures. It might not be going to another country at this time, but there are still ways to learn about others and think about how we can engage with diversity to continue to expand our skill set and gain experience. And then lastly, undergraduate research. Is anybody here thinking grad school at all? Maybe grad school, potentially. I especially point undergraduate research out for my grad school aspirants as they think about how to make themselves most successful in that application process. Research can make you a really strong candidate. And so I always encourage them to think early about, can I take on undergraduate research in my classes through assignments I already have to do by choosing relevant topics as I do projects in my classes? Am I thinking about independent research? Do I want to be a research assistant for a faculty member? How can I start developing those relationships early? And then we also have job shadows and informational interviews along this list, which I've mentioned already too. So just like with the other resources I've pointed out, this is not an all-encompassing list, but this is what we talk to students most frequently about in terms of gaining experience. Right now is kind of an odd time, of course, to be thinking about how to do these things, but I think we're all practicing our adaptability and figuring out how we can still engage virtually through things like Zoom conversations or panels, or there's a lot of free online learning that you can take advantage of right now to gain experience or gain skills. So I think that we'll see a lot coming out around these areas over the next few months, but certainly considering how you can start to build these things into your future planning and also reflect on ways you've already gained experience and think about how does that influence your career plan? Have you reflected on what went well, what didn't go well, and how does that affect your choices that you're going to make in terms of your future career planning? And then a couple of other resources I want to point out, and I know I only had 15 minutes, so I'm going to try and buzz through these really quickly. Searching for jobs and internships. Here we have tools like how to build a resume, including some examples and tips on writing effective bullet points, cover letters, interviewing. We have a section on applying for grad school, as well as identity-based resources for the job search. And then lastly, I did mention that we kind of had this pinned area around COVID-19 at the top of our page. If anybody is currently thinking about internships, we don't have any seniors in this class, do we? That are looking at full-time? We do have one. Okay, full-time job search. If you're thinking about that process as well, we've got links here for our graduating seniors for internships and full-time jobs, and even for summer and part-time resources to think about what factors do I need to be considering as I'm searching right now, thinking about how to be successful in that search, how can I consider remote options, and how do I make sure that I'm successful if I am undertaking some type of search right now. So this is what we're probably meeting with students about the most currently, is My summer internship was canceled. How do I find a new experience? My summer internship is going remote. How do I adjust to that? I'm searching for full-time work, but a lot of positions that I thought I was looking for aren't currently posted. So now how do I pivot and find other opportunities, maybe consider other industries that I might be interested in working in as well, as we're entering a really interesting and, of course, new time for everybody. And then lastly, the last thing I'll point out on our website is just this make an appointment button that's on every page. We are still meeting with students right now through Microsoft Teams and WebEx. So if you have questions after today and you want to talk more, I'm happy to have an individual conversation with you about your goals and your career planning too. How's that marathon overview?
That was great.
Great. What questions do folks have, or is there an area you'd like me to discuss further, more in depth?
I actually have one question.
Sure.
So if you want to apply to be a research assistant, is there like specific deadlines to do that for next semester?
It really varies on department.
Okay.
So I would suggest getting into contact with faculty that you might be interested in working with. If you're not interested in a specific faculty member, just in maybe a department, you could also contact their academic department. Help me out, Dr. Garcia. I'm blanking on the ADA. What does ADA stand for? Academic Department Associate, right?
Yeah, for English, that's Cullen.
Yeah, the person that runs their department can probably point you in the direction of some folks who are currently well, most of them are conducting research, but somebody who might have a research interest in your area. Many faculty members also update their profiles with their research interests. So you can take a look at the My People page on departments and see who has research interests in your area and reach out to them directly. But again, it really just depends on the faculty member and where they are in their research on when they're looking for assistance.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I might have had a question. I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but do you know when study abroad programs are going to be back up and running?
We sure do not know. Summer programs, of course, have been canceled. Many fall programs have been canceled and will likely more will be canceled. So it's going to depend on, I think, it's going to depend on a lot of factors that I could talk for a long time about, but no, we don't have a good answer for it now. I think it will probably be until we see more stringent testing, more accessible testing, and until we start to see probably some sort of vaccine where we know that it's safe to travel and we know where hotspots are.
Gotcha.
Then I also have a question about study abroad, because I've been planning on doing it, and mainly for like having credit outside of the semester, because I was going to go during the summer. Other than doing like summer session, are there any alternatives for study abroad available? Like, are there going to be like online courses through like different universities wherever we have studied abroad, or is study abroad just going to be kind of nixed for the time being?
I don't have a great answer for that. I do know that I've heard of some study abroad programs going online, and International Education and Engagement can tell you probably more specifically than I can, but I've heard of some folks who are able to take classes online with other universities. I think the question will probably become, how much are they charging for those types of experiences? How much are you willing to pay to take, an online class where you're really not able to immerse yourself in the same way as if you could actually visit that country or go to that program? There's also the National Student Exchange Program, and I wonder if something like that might open up again before some of the international experiences. Again, probably not in the very near future, but that might be something we see an opportunity for earlier, but I don't have a good answer for that. International education, I know they're learning new information every day, and they would hope that they could give you a solid answer, but they'll probably be able to get it closer anyway than I can.
That's all right. There are like no answers for some of these things. It's just kind of questions out into the void, and only time will tell.
Yes.
I think it's good to raise them, because especially with people who are in charge of like disseminating that kind of information, because it's good for faculty, for administrative staff to hear your concerns and to hear your questions. It helps us when we try to like sort out what the best things to do are. to have heard what
Right.
you guys are asking. I had a student, one of my advisees was in Italy at the beginning of this semester and came home after like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But she's still taking her Italian courses
Yep.
online. And I know for some people who want to study a foreign language that maybe we don't offer here. So it's possible that there could be programs that I don't know, reciprocal programs or something to help people study the languages they want to study.
Yeah. There are a lot of the students who are pulled back this semester that are currently studying abroad online. So it's possible that some of those will continue if those opportunities don't open up for the fall.
And I was encouraged to hear that they did that because I was really worried that she was going to lose a whole semester of credits, basically. And this means that she won't. Like, I was really concerned about now her time to degree, having signed up for that experience and then to have it canceled is heartbreaking in itself. But then to have like the added tragedy of having lost 12 credits, would have been
what a
would have
headache.
been really, really serious. And it turns out that she's going to get credit for the courses that she was enrolled in there.
Good. Other questions? All right.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us and sharing your information.
Yes, thank you for having me. Just again, a reminder that I'm still here and happy to chat with you. So if after this conversation, you're like, whoa, I need to be thinking about my career plan some more, please feel free to give me a call, give me an email, and we can chat more.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Right. You're welcome. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
I always do that one at the end of the semester, and I wonder now if I should do it like the second week, so that people could because it does have a lot of those self-reflective things that we kind of do at the beginning of the semester. And there might be a way to, I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think it would be more helpful at the beginning of the semester just because then people know they are there.
Yeah.
Instead of like at the end of the semester, it's like, oh, that would have been helpful.
Right. Or maybe even have them come twice, right? At the beginning of the semester to say, here are these things you could do to find out what you can do with your major. And then at the end to say, all right, now that you're ready to get your resume polished up and meet with someone about jobs. So I think I may move that next semester.
I think moving it to the beginning is also really useful for because usually when I walk into these different types of offices, this happened a lot with when I was looking up studying abroad stuff, I would go into the office and I would ask a question, or I wouldn't know what questions to ask, and then they would just be like, look online.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a survey you have to fill out and it takes 20 minutes, so it's not even useful for you to be here right now.
Yeah.
But
So
having these things and knowing what to do before going in would be helpful.
Yeah. And maybe if you have all these questions and you're not really sure what questions you should even be asking, making an appointment with somebody there who can help you ask the right questions in the right departments, can be really useful, that you're not trying to figure it out yourself online and moving around. It's interesting. People talk about just-in-time delivery of information, which means that I'm telling you the information that you need for your campus resources at the time when you are most likely to need them. And you can see why career services is something I would think you would need at the end of the semester when you were about to go into, but they must get busy too at this time. And it occurs to me it would be worth knowing much earlier and being able to go through their, if you're interested in that sort of thing, to go through their self-evaluation profile thing. I know when I started graduate school, I went to career services at that institution at the University of Michigan, and I asked for a Myers-Briggs test. Because you can take a lot of the cheaty ones online where you answer 10 questions and they tell you your Myers-Briggs. But I wanted to take the real test. And it was one of those things that it's kind of hard to get a hold of if you're not a psychotherapist or a sociologist or somebody who uses it as part of their job. But career services often have them because of the idea that the more you know about how you operate, the better you are at finding career fit, fitting in at figuring out what kinds of work environments will actually work with your regular ways of doing things or your automatic ways of doing things. So yeah, I'm an INTP in case you're wondering. Although my T and F are like 50-50, like the questions go either way. So sometimes I'm an INFP, I guess.
Oh my God, I think we're the same one. Yay!
Woohoo! So it's useful, I think, to know, especially when you do something like teaching, which is such a social job, what it means to be an introvert in a teacher, or what it means to be an extrovert in a teacher, to identify that way, and then think about what that means for like how you organize your time as a teacher. And that's probably true in other jobs as well. I just don't have as much experience with those to speak to it. All right, so here we are in the home stretch, and I'll do this one more time. I just want to show you the academic and career plan. I sort of streamlined it. Like I had it in Google Docs. It was linked from here to Google Docs, and I just put it in Canvas. This makes it easier. I think it's still over there in our Google folder if you want to look at it there. Although this one I've cleaned up a little bit. But this last project for this class is really a reflective project, right? 3 to 5 pages, reflective essay that draws on your readings and experiences throughout the semester to explain how they contributed to your decision to major or minor in English, or how your understanding of your major and minor has changed. Some of the most successful ones actually from last year were people who changed majors. Some of them even changed out of English. I always have a few people change out of English. I have a few people jump into English. I have a few people cross whichever English major they had into a different one for whatever reason. But any kind of a reflective paper, and you can do this even if you didn't change majors, you know, if you didn't make a change as big as that, but any kind of reflective paper really focuses on your transformation from beginning to end, right? And maybe that transformation was tiny, right? You knew this is what you're going to do. You're about finished anyway. You're just, you know, looking to complete a requirement or whatever. Or maybe your transformation was huge. You thought you were going to do one thing, and now you know that's not what you want to pursue. But either way, you can fill a couple of pages with like how that movement happened and what it means to you, right? So it's 3 to 5 double-spaced pages. If you should cite readings or guest lectures or class discussions. And I'm not super picky about, I mean, look up MLA format for some advice on what that should look like. Usually it's like the last name of the speaker or the last name of the author, right? And that's sufficient for me, right? I don't need anything more specific than that. And then whichever ones you'll do a quick, maybe bibliography, just a list of the readings that were useful in the speakers. It's informal, so you should write in first person, but cite and format it like an MLA, using MLA or APA, either of those. And then these are the things you might include. So you probably won't hit every single one of these bullet points. That would be longer than 3 to 5 pages, but pick the ones that seem most relevant to you to tell your story about the class. It's super helpful to me to hear what readings were useful to you or made you think differently or more clearly about the majors and minors, or your own involvement with English studies. It's super useful to me to hear the ones that just didn't land, right? Either like you didn't know what they were trying to tell you, or there was just, you know, or it was too boring to even get through. There's no guarantee that I'll change it. Part of this course is sort of set up in collaboration with other professors who teach it. So there are some things I can change very easily, and other things like the textbooks that I don't have as much power over, because other people who teach this section also have a say in what those are. But just like last semester, people really hated reading the whole Anders book. And so this semester, we read some chapters at the beginning and some chapters at the end that I thought were most useful, right? So I do have that kind of control over what we use in the classroom. And this is a great space for you to tell me, these speakers were really high impact. I learned a lot. I picked classes based on them. Or I avoided classes based on them. We had a couple of speakers like that last time, where for like personality reasons or whatever, they were like, you know, I thought maybe not. So that's okay too. Like, it's useful. I find it to be all useful information. And I don't take it too personally if you didn't like what I had planned. I mean, I plan a lot of things, but I don't know everybody. I don't know you all before I plan it. So there's a limit to how much I can plan in advance and know what will appeal to you. So it's good for me to hear what worked and what didn't, and how your thinking changed over the course of the semester. Are there any questions about this?
When is the paper due?
Next Friday, so like
The
a week
8th.
and a half from today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Sure.
Oh, so not an English major.
Right.
For my this paper, I should kind of just say I didn't know anything about English before coming in, so there's a lot I can actually write about since
Yeah.
I've learned so much. So it could be more of like this is what I was wrong about. I also learned a lot about how English is useful in my field. So
That's perfect.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so if you thought about your paper in those 3 sections, I didn't really know a lot. You might say why you took the class, because that'd be interesting to know too. Because I always do have a few people who are not majors who take the class. I mean, Ayana was laughing at me, but there are always a few people who come from sociology or, the health professions or something, and they're maybe sometimes they're thinking about the English health minor, or the English and, I don't know, rhetoric and health professions or whatever. Just sometimes they're thinking about that, but that's not their major when they come in. And so, yeah, it's interesting from like a advertising standpoint. Should I be telling people, if you're not an English major, don't waste your time with this class? Or should I be telling people, even if you're not an English major, you might get something of value, right? And that's hard to know, except to hear from people who are living in that experience, to tell me how
I
that's.
think I think as many people should take this class as possible, even if they're not an English major.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll quote you in my promotional materials.
Do it. Quote me. Yep.
Awesome. So, anything else? Any other questions,
I
concerns?
have a question.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of off track, but since this is Introduction to English Studies, why is it a 300 level course?
It's supposed to be the very first 300 level course you take.
Okay.
So all of the courses that are assigned to the major are 300 level courses. Everything 200 level and below is a gen ed course. But because this is required for the major, it's a 300 level course, but it is 300 because it's supposed to be the very first one that you take.
Cool.
It's brand new. We just started it this year. I'm trying to think. I think maybe Dr. Fowler taught a section of it in the spring of this time last year. And that was the first time it had been implemented. And the original plan, I think, I wasn't here for the planning of it because I just got hired here last year. But the original idea behind it was that it would be a team taught course, right? And that 2 professors would teach it together and kind of hand off the different disciplinary things. Those kinds of things, those kinds of plans are so attractive and people love them. But implementing them become just a logistical headache, And so it's why we don't have as much cross-disciplinary work or cross-disciplinary stuff as we'd like. And why Dr. Eschenbaum was talking about how long it took them to get the English and the health professions major approved, right? They floated a bunch of ideas before then that were like, a biology professor and an English professor would work together and make this happen. And it's just so difficult to like coordinate to make that stuff go. So anyway, that was a long answer to your question. It's a 300 because it's required for the major and it's not a general ed course. So yeah. Anything else?
I have an extremely off-topic question.
Let's hear it.
So the speaker kind of mentioned like things that have like the potential of like being canceled in fall, like just due to the uncertainty. I was wondering if you've heard anything about like the potential of having online learning next semester.
For UWL or for local K-12? Because you're doing field stuff, right?
Yeah.
I have heard the most recent thing from the provost, I think came through yesterday, and it was that at this point they have not made a decision and that they're not going to make the decision before July 15th or something. Like she had a date at which they would make a decision, and it's sometime in mid or late July.
Okay.
It might be in here. They want, of course, to have in-person classes. And I think it's sort of like if they had to make the call now, they would have to say online. But if they wait, it's possible that we'll have like enough testing and enough days without cases or whatever that we could maybe reasonably reopen. I wonder if it's in here, and I could tell you exactly what she said. This is a lot more information than I usually get from the provost, and so spring updates. No, I would just be going through here trying to read all the things that she said. Yeah, I'll find it and try to put it in an announcement for what it really, for the actual date that she gave us. But basically, they're going to hold off making the decision in hopes that we'll get enough good news or have enough good news over enough weeks to reasonably open in the fall.
Okay.
They're also trying to work through some kind of like intermediate plans where like they would split up, they wouldn't hold the like 100-person classes, or they would break those into smaller groups somehow so that we would have classes, but they wouldn't be 100-person classes. They would be 20-person classes, you know, so that it would be easier for you to limit your interaction with hundreds of people, you know. So I know that there's a lot of holding off too while they think about, all right, if we were to reopen, should there still be some things that we put in place to make sure people are not as exposed to as many different people, so that if we were to have an outbreak, we'd be able to figure out how to contact trace and keep people safe. So I'm sorry, that's not a better.
No, that is. There's been a lot of like rumors and like speculation, but no one has had like a solid answer. So I'm glad there's at least like something going on to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in the faculty, a lot of rumors and speculation too, because we're looking at what other institutions are doing and we're like, oh, would we maybe do that? Would we maybe do that? What if we did that? You know? So there's a lot of ideas in the air about what could happen. So I think but I know that they've got like a midsummer deadline to make the call.
Okay.
Anything else? Well, I will stop the recording.